So welcome once again to the Sardik and Filipe experience, web experience. This is like Sardik told in his post, and I'm also very in agreement with that affirmation. Is that this is not another boring webinar. So it's not like this kind of webinar that we give like a very small part for the questions. So we give the possibility of people to make more questions, and we only give a kind of framework from the beginning. So the topic today is how to convert face-to-face training into online. This is a very nowadays topic, because a lot of trainers are like completely crazy, because suddenly they went from face-to-face, the thing that always liked, to something that looks a bit boring and very challenged, that is online. And the problem is that this is not for this moment. It will be for a long time. Actually, I've seen that a lot of companies are now making their training plans for 2021, and guess what? There is no face-to-face training forecast, all online. So either we adapt or we will miss the train. So it is not so hard. It is not so complicated. So I will tell you a little bit about my own experience, and Sardik will tell after about his own experience. To give you a bit of a framework, I have been doing online training since dial-up connections. So I was doing with dial-up connections. So doing now, it's so easy, so fantastic. Because before it was like sending PDF back and forth, Word document or something like that. And it was amazing because it took like 1 hour to download a Word document. And that was the hard moments. Nowadays, we have a lot of technology, but I think that because of that, also people are a bit lost. What are the best tools? What should I use? So in that way, we are here to help you. That's why we will do a kind of framework at the beginning, like the first 20 minutes, and then questions from your side, and we will answer everything that we know and can. So Sardik, what is your experience in this area? I took the microphone out, everybody. Also, if you want to let's say to ask any questions, if you can raise your hand using the tool for raising hand, it will be very good, because with that, we can see it and we will give you the floor immediately. Sardik, your turn. Sardik, you look like a fish because you didn't put your mic on.
There we go. How about that? So everybody's good to see you, and thanks for putting where you are calling or dialing in or videoing in from. So my name is Sardik Love, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm based here in Northern Virginia. I have been doing online training probably since dial-up days as well. I guess that's kind of funny when you said that. That's true.
We are old.
Yeah, we are old. Back, some of y'all don't know what that means, but that was back in the day when you would dial in with your phone line and you could just, but anyway, I won't bore you with those details. Fond memories of waiting forever. Anyway, I do a lot of most of my online training. I'm a consultant and a performance consultant and training professional and a speaker. And I do most of my online training either throughout my own business, and I'm also a facilitator, one of the master facilitators for ATD. I'm a contractor to them for their online programs as well as their face-to-face. So I teach the master performance consultant, master trainer, and a few other programs for ATD. And so some of you may have met me through the Association for Talent Development. So we're going to talk a little bit around this. And as we get into this, what Filipe and I thought we would do is, like you mentioned, give you a framework. And we're just going to kind of answer all your questions. And so that I'll keep it short to that point. And let's go ahead. So you want to kick us back off and get us? Yeah, go for it.
Have you noticed that Sardik has a guest of his own in the back? He probably didn't notice that he has the guest. Okay. So you see, very nice. So One of the things that, because I'm this kind of dinosaur, digital dinosaur, that I'm using this from a long time. Actually, I never got with 9,600 baud modems. I got the lowest, it was the 14.4K. So it was like, wow, absolutely amazing. And then it went very fast until 56. So fantastic. And one of the things that I learned from there is that you have to keep it simple. Nowadays, I see that people are getting a little bit confused that if I need to know I need to do some group dynamic, like I do in face-to-face. So one of the things that, to give you an example of that, keep it simple, is that sometimes I do a kind of icebreaker where people do by this only drawing. They draw their name, their interests, where they are coming from, only with drawings in a paper. And I still do this exercise, and you might start thinking, okay, I need to use a whiteboard or some special app so they can draw it and then share it online. Keep it simple. So what you do, you use a thing like this, and they draw and they explain. Nothing special. And it's much easier. You say, pick a piece of paper, a pen, and do it. Why not? Why you have to complicate it? Because at some point you have to teach them how to use the app or the program that you are using. Make it simple in a way that it's the goal of the train. It's not the goal of the train to teach the technology behind of the training. So keep it simple. Sadiq, your turn.
I love that high-tech Portuguese term of love it. Love it. Now, in addition to, and one of the things about what Filipe and I do here is we bounce off of each other, is we have a nice yin and yang to us. So he says, keep it simple. And I also say, keep it simple. And I'll go in the angle of, if you do use technology, do keep it simple in terms of the tools that you use. Now, it comes back to engagement, folks, and this is a design issue. And I posted here for you in the chat. If you would, go ahead and tell us so that we can frame up the questions. What are the biggest challenges that you face going from face-to-face to virtual and doing that conversion? Let us know what those are so we can kind of loop back and see what you got in chat. But in terms of keeping it simple, and when I say keep it simple, I mean keep it really simple in terms of the technology, as well as your phrases that you use. And I put at the very beginning of the chat a classic example of using language that people don't know or don't understand. So I was on a webinar earlier this week, or actually late last week, and I won't name the company name because a lot of people would know this is a very large global company. And the presenter, one of the presenters, used the word listicle. And I was like, what? Exactly, Chris. I saw your reaction.
I just put it again in the chat. So you might not understand it by listening, and you get it again.
Yeah. So, and my reaction was just that, Crystal, was classic. I was like, I was actually halfway paying attention, and he said listicle. I was like, what? What the heck is that? And so I jumped out of that and Googled that, because I was like, I've never heard this word. It sounds like a body part. It sounds disgusting. And all it is, it's a legitimate word. It's a word that somebody came up with in 2005 that's a combination of list and article. It's an article that has got a bunch of things in a list format, listicle. Don't do that. Okay, keep things simple, folks. And so your tools, use your annotation tools, do the engagement stuff. And I'm going to talk a little bit around design here in a little bit, but keep it simple. So I'm going to throw it back over to you, my friend.
Okay, thank you very much. And you were joking about my low-tech thing, is that many times we try to use a lot of programs and everything. So I try to keep it as simple as possible. For instance, I like very much mind mapping. So if you want to do a kind of brainstorming, you can share the screen and you can be the person that is directing the brainstorming, and you can ask people to give you contributions, and you do the mind map. So don't try to I was dealing with some people that I'm doing consultancy, and they were like trying to use drawing programs and everything, and it was only complicating. So people will be in this environment with completely different knowledge of technology, with completely different computers, with completely different Wi-Fi access and things like this. So if you do it through the lowest minimum denominator, it is best, because you will be in the safe zone, and at the same time is easier. The whiteboard, the problem is that, for instance, for me, it's very complicated because I'm very bad in drawing. I really cannot draw a straight line. So unless I pre-prepare it, it's a possibility. And also, for instance, in Zoom, there is a whiteboard. What tool I recommend for mind mapping? So I use also, again, very simple. It's a free one. It's called, and it's very easy because it's free mind. So it works very well, simple. I use it in my desktop, and there are others. There are tons of it, but that is completely free, and I love it. So back to you.
So back, and similar to Filipe, whatever tools you use, and I'm starting to look at some of your comments here. And again, if you haven't already done so, feel free to post in the chat. What are the biggest challenges that you're facing in terms of moving from face-to-face to virtual? And so I see some of the comments here already going, what are some of the activities? And so this is where you can, as Filipe already demonstrated, using paper. And if you watched our previous webinar on some cool tools and things, I actually demonstrated 30 circles. And so you can go back and look at that webinar and see the 30 circles activity. But it does come back to building in, and I'm going to go big picture here for a second. When you look at designing your face-to-face, moving it over to your virtual formats, the biggest challenge and biggest problem that most people have in terms of doing this is the design is done incorrectly. Start at the big picture with what is the outcome that you're seeking. And I know all of us on this webinar know that, but I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm going to be frank with you. Most training is poorly designed and poorly delivered. Okay? And the design is where the challenges are, because we don't design to get to results. We design based on the amount of time or the amount of content that we have. Most training is time driven and content overloaded, as opposed to results focused. So design your online programs and make it so that they move towards the outcome that you're seeking. What that means is keep it simple, chunk it down in your design, and then use the time that you have virtually and do it in a blended way. So the time that you have live, have them do things very simply that reinforce the behaviors that you want them to build the habits of doing and performing. Let me say that again. I want you to design, the idea here is to design in your live formats activities that give them a chance to practice the skills and behaviors that they need to be able to apply back on the job. And most training doesn't do that. Most of our training that I see and that I coach people on is poorly designed because it's focused on going through a lot of content. So keep this stuff simple. Use the annotation tools, what makes sense. Use activities that make sense in a virtual space. And I'll stop there. And like I said, we'll come back and answer a lot of questions on that. So I'm going to throw it back over, and Filipe is going to go over one more thing. I'll tie in some things around that, and then we'll kind of just dive in and start answering all your questions.
By the way, for instance, I was seeing a question from Crystal. It would be, for us, it would be very nice if you could do the questions by voice, because sometimes we might not get the exact meaning of it. So we can, let's say, understand it better. And this is a problem that I'm having with a question from Crystal that just put it here. So Sardik, if you can understand it better, you can answer after, but I was like reading back and forth, not hearing you, what is a pity, because you are always nice. But I got this, but I saw other questions. For instance, in terms of fun and in getting engagement of the participants online, they need to understand that the content is being created also by them. So we need to create forms of engagement, and sometimes it's very simple, is making questions and asking them to answer, like I just did, answer by your own voice, and ask. So with that, we can create unique content. Because if not, we do a recording. If it's only to explain something, we can do a recording and send it, and then we have a moment of discussion. Because if not, it can be very boring. That's why I was joking at the beginning, and it's true. This is not another boring webinar. It's a conversation. So we will not drown you in PowerPoint presentations. My last point, and then we can continue with your questions, is as a trainer, we have to be masters of our own destiny. So as much as possible, we should create our own content. So for instance, I create my own videos. I create my own recorded presentations. There are loads of tools that help you on that, and I can share afterwards if you want some of those tools that make it very easy. So I think that now a trainer is demanded to create their own multimedia content. Like some years ago, it began to be demanded to create their own PowerPoint, and not the guy in IT would create it. So be the master of your own destiny in terms of content, because that way you can create content just in time for that need that you feel that the group has. Sadiq.
Got nothing else to add to that. That's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. And, so let's go ahead and dive in and start looking at some of the questions you have. And I know we gave you 3 basic things. I'll recap what Filipe said here. And the 3 things were: keep it simple, be as low tech as possible in terms of complication. Don't use a lot of things that you don't have to unnecessarily. And then, like you said, be a master of your own content. So it doesn't mean you have to be an expert at everything, but definitely be capable of delivering content. And you all know, as a master facilitator, it doesn't matter whether it's face-to-face or virtual. A master facilitator, I can take your content, and I'm not saying this egotistically, but this is the difference between master trainers and facilitators and everybody else. I can take your content and deliver it because I know how to facilitate. And so you should be doing the same thing online. And so that's another angle for that last point. So why don't we do this, Filipe, and let's kind of start addressing some questions. And I know there's a good dialogue, and this is the other thing we like about this particular format, is you all are doing exactly what we want you to do: throw things out, interact with each other. So maybe we can take a question, and I know we got several here, but if anyone wants to, as Filipe said, throw their question out verbally, if you raise your hand, either using the tool or a visible raise your hand, we'll open up your microphone so you can ask your question, and we'll just spend the rest of the time addressing as many questions that you have and go as deep or as high level as you want. Who wants to go first? Who has a question?
While there is some people shy, I want to give an answer to my good friend Yasim, that he was suggesting using the Wacom table of drawing. I have one of those, but even though I'm so bad in drawing that I prefer to use it as low tech as possible. I have here even the pen of it. So also another software that is very nice to create interaction is Mentimeter. I use it also in face-to-face training, and you can ask questions and it can create PowerPoint presentations. So let's say, how many of you went to Mexico? And I could do a poll instantly and show the results immediately on a PowerPoint. Very nice. And you can do until for each poll you can do 3 questions. So, but you can divide it in 3 polls and you can use it for free. So Yasim, you want the floor, please. Tell us.
Yes, thank you very much for your continuous educating us. And thank you for the last time I suggested Bucket. I use it all the time and I recommend it. Excellent tool. So this is what the whole thing about is exchanging ideas and learning from each other as as trainers and consultants. Now, what do you think of using the method or the concept of the flipped classroom in the training? Like you would record some of your lectures and ask them to do it before the actual training, and then do the exercises and the activities instead of repeating the lecture that you do every time. So a standard like 5-minute lectures, and you ask them to view them before doing the actual training online.
You want to go for it? Sanjay.
Okay, I'll go and take it. So yes, that's exactly, you know what the flipped classroom is? It's just what we call blended learning. That's what blended learning is, right? And so that's the whole point here when I said have a learning path is basically flipped classroom. If you're familiar with the term, if you're not familiar with the term, basically anything that you don't need to share in terms of information, if it's standard information, things that they can read, things that they can do offline, give it to them and let them do that offline and use your live instructional time only for things where they actually apply or get them into application as much as possible. And that is the most effective type of virtual training. Now, your clients will not understand that design. They will not see that. They will want to force you, like many face-to-face programs, to just chuck it full of content and drown people in content. That does not produce the results. But the flipped classroom in my, let me stop talking there and give it back to you all, but that's the key, yes. So Jasmine, yes, absolutely use a flipped classroom model.
Yeah, it's actually, I think it's the future of learning is the flipped classroom. This idea of going to a place where somebody is repeating over and over and over again the same content. If you think about it, it's like this movie of Charlie Chaplin, Modern Times. Okay, the guy was like screwing the same screw, like wang, 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 wang. It's not logical, but we do it. We do it. There was some discussion while we wait for the next hand. There was some discussion about how to even price it in terms of online, how to sell to the customers online. I think this is also an opportunity to create new formats of training services, because you can create different types and that are available, and they go much more into the needs of the client. Instead of doing the normal training that people go there, they contact, and maybe they can share emails afterwards or something like that. You can do stuff like you can do like a flipped classroom. You deliver some content before so asynchronous model with synchronous, so something like this, that you will debate some of the questions, get some doubts, and do some case studies, whatever, because you can also do breakout rooms with tools like this. Or you can also give the possibility of having like a combo. So if you buy this course, you can have like X hours of customized consulting to each person in the training in order to help them to make the change that they need to make. So at the same time, you are offering something that is much more difficult to compare in terms of price, because it's a package that it's different from what is the competition offering. So any other questions that you have? I was giving time for raising hands. We have a very shy group this time. They prefer to do it by chat. More questions? We like to hear voices.
So was there Michelle, or I'm sorry, Crystal, did you have your hand up? Yes, Crystal.
I did. I couldn't find the raise hand button. So that's something
else. It's on the
I
participants. Sorry, I didn't say this because Zoom seems
there it is.
You go on the participants.
There we go.
Raise hand. So please, thank you very much for raising. And I cannot. I'm looking to. I have like the speaker's view, so I only see a few squares. So.
I know, me too. I try to figure out the best format of like having it in everybody in the grid, like Brady Bunch, or just like the person talking. But I think the biggest thing, it's kind of a question, kind of a comment. I think the biggest thing that I've learned is I need a moderator. and I don't always have the resource or the money. So I need someone so I can work out a deal with the client that, hey, can you monitor the chat box? Because, you're on a flow and then you see a button. And then like you were saying, Filipe, like, okay, now I have to figure out the screen and who's talking. And I would love to hear your insights on, the moderation, because someone used the term cognitive load. It really is a lot now. If I'm in the room, I can just do my thing and I'm just out there teaching, and, I can see the hands, see the facial expressions. Now I'm doing a lot more with keeping to the same material that I've always taught, and then also trying to monitor this chat box. So that's something that I'm struggling with, and I don't know if you have some insight to keep it simple. And if it's just basically get your client to do it, then so be it. I'll work with them to do it.
Well, I can start with that. And Sadiq actually has an experience with moderators. And from last webinar, we talked about a little bit from that. In my view, I prefer to control everything. I'm a control freak. So what I try to is to bring people outside of the chat to do like you just did, a question like this. It's much more interactive, and because you can create a kind of lateral dialogue that's impossible to figure out. And at the same time, for me, the moderator, it doesn't get to be so personal, because when I'm dealing with a question like this, like I'm dealing with your question, I think I'm much more personal than if somebody else is reading me your question, because that person will not read the question like you said it in such an emphatic way, okay? Because you express your emotions about it. And the moderator will read it like this, very simple. This is the question from Crystal. So, but Sadiq, you probably have another view about it.
Yeah, Filipe knows that I exclusively, whenever I do virtual programs, particularly live programs, I'm always going to have a professional moderator. I don't do it without one, for the very reasons that you described, Crystal. I don't want to fool with the tech. I don't want to fool with people who can't get in the room. I don't want to fool with the breakout sessions and all of the things, because I do now. I am very, I guess, on a scale or a continuum in terms of virtual training. I do a lot of activities online. And I know in a previous webinar, we talked about this. So it might be good, Crystal, to go back and check that previous one. And we'll share how you can look at those. But the short, I'll close out by saying this. You should be interacting or having them interacting with you in some capacity every 3 to 4 minutes. And that framework is basically ask a question and then have them respond to that question with an answer in some capacity, whether you have them do it in a pair capacity online, you put them in groups of 3 or groups of 4, you put them in breakout rooms, you have them use the annotation tools, or raise your hand, give me a green check if you like this, or red X if you don't like that, or all those kind of annotation tools that most platforms have. You should be using that if you are going to have an interactive design. And you should have a moderator that takes care of all that tech, so that it allows you to focus on the facilitation if you choose to be of that side. And if you want to do it all yourself and have the love and patience like Filipe has, then do it that way. If you like, I don't have that patience. I would probably throw my laptop across the room if I had to do that.
By the way, to prove that I'm managing that is that we have a question from Facebook Live, because this is going to Facebook Live, and Marcus from Marcus Gartner is asking how I put this in Facebook Live at the same time. Very easy. Zoom has the possibility of broadcasting to YouTube Live, to Workplace in Facebook, and in Facebook by only choosing this. You choose that option and it goes live. What is nice when we are talking about a webinar, so you have different platforms where you can be having questions and also broadcasting. So, Rachel, tell us.
Hi, so I'm here in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I work with a really strong team when we are in the office, and that is what they've always built as a company. And so what we're trying to do is continue building that team dynamic in a virtual setting. but we have about a third of the people in the office, which means they do not have cameras. So I'm running into issues getting everyone involved when not everyone can see each other, but they can hear each other. And I'm wondering what you guys would suggest for continuing that interactivity and that strong team dynamic and building that in a way that they still believe is possible.
Sardik, you can start.
Yeah, I think that my short answer, and Filipe will have his answer here. My short answer, Rachel, on this one is, and it's a dual answer. Number one, if the engagement, if you perceive and you value that the engagement requires video, then provide them with cameras. Get an external camera for everybody. That's the simplest answer. Now, a lot of people are not comfortable on video, and so you got to be mindful of that. And even here we have, there's lots of articles now about webinar and Zoom fatigue. So you have to be mindful of all that. And I see heads shaking there. So what I would say to you is, if the engagement requires video, keep it limited to when you only need it, and then allow people the option to choose. But if you absolutely require, you have to set that up in the expectation and give them the tools that allow them to do that. That's my short answer.
I agree completely. I was going to say, ask them, really, you will get a better experience if you have a camera, because if we see each other is much better. The thing is that what I see nowadays is completely different than in January, let's say, because of this lockdown. People are getting much more savvy in terms of technology. So using now this type of technology is much easier than 3 months ago. So also they realize much more the importance of having a good sound, good video, in order also for them to work, because they have to do presentations, they have to talk with clients, they have to show stuff, and these platforms people are improving. So this is a situation that is like a transition. It is like I remember when 3G arrived, the mobile network, the idea was now we can do video calling. And it didn't work because they'd start charging for video calling like absurd prices. And so it was a flop. And now with FaceTime, with Skype, with Zoom and everything, people are like talking with the grandparents. They have this kind of technology available and they are using it. So it's a transition. I think we, like Sardik was saying, we need to be more comfortable. And I think this is a problem. I've give you an idea. I've trained trainers that they don't feel comfortable in looking to a camera. They feel like it's strange. But many of the times they do a kind of mistakes that, for instance, you should like look at the camera like this. So it has in front of your eyes, don't look up, don't look like down or something like that. So, and invest in sound. Sound is very important. That's why, for instance, I have this huge thing here. And you see, it's the same
He shows his, I'll show mine.
Yes. But mine is more white.
I'm not going to touch that. I'm going to leave that one alone.
So you see, also
this is being recorded too.
Also, when you are much more at ease with the mean, you can have the same fun as you have in a class. I wouldn't say that exactly the same fun, but it is. You can almost reach it if you have the image. So.
Now, Filipe, I want to come back because I do see something here. We actually just modeled something. I'm gonna hit the thing that I saw here in the chat, but I want to come back. See what we're doing now in your virtual presentations. Be conversational, have fun. Whatever is appropriate for you, have fun. And he and I have a really awesome working relationship where we can banter off each other like you just saw. So be comfortable with who you are and do that. The one thing I did see, Zipporah had a question around fun learning and how do you create fun learning online. And she asked, do we have ideas about gamification features other than Kahoot? So let me step back on this question for a second, Zipporah. And because most trainers go one angle, I'm not suggesting you went this angle, but I'm going to go there in case you did. Most trainers look at what tools and what games can I play to embed to make things fun and engaging. Okay. I would encourage you to think the other way around. I would encourage you to think, what's the outcome that you want them to be able to produce, or what's the behavior you want them to be able to demonstrate that gets to the result that you want them to produce. Based on that, then look for the activities that put them in simulations where they have to actually practice those behaviors and skills. Now, the way I explain this, and I have some, and if anyone wants this, I'm going to give it to you right now. So write this, I'll put it in the chat after I stop talking. I have several games that I do in face-to-face training, and I give them away for free, the entire facilitation process. If you go to highimpactactivities.com, I'll put that in the chat later, H-I-G-H, impactactivities.com, and you can sign up to get 9 of my most popular and effective training activities. Now, some of them do translate. These are all face-to-face. Some of them will translate to a virtual space. But the reason I'm bringing those up is if you go in there and you look, you'll see in there, I say, here's the facilitation notes. Here's video of me doing the activity. But here's the key. Here are 12 different problems that your ideal customers or your target audience has. Here are 12 problems that particular activity is good for. What am I saying? Is I start with what's the problem I'm trying to solve, and then I find activities that force them to demonstrate the behaviors and get the learning on how to overcome those problems. So rather than look at tools and be tool focused like Kahoot and all these other different online polls and things like that, come back and first say, what do we want them to be able to do behaviorally? What simulates that behavior? And then find the activities that do that. And I'll close out by saying this. The best place to find those types of activities, you can look at Tiagi. Many of you are familiar with Tiagi. He gives a lot of this stuff away for free. He's also on a conference that I'm also one of the speakers at, L&D conference that's coming up. So there's a bunch of gamification speakers in that L&D conference. So if you go LD conference, Learning Development Conference, whatever it is, I'll put that in the website or the chat here. Conference, you'll see a bunch of speakers who are going to be doing gamification. So I know it's a little bit longer than I meant to speak, but I encourage all of you to look for things that help to, don't play the game for the sake of the game or the activity for the sake of the activity for engagement. Do it so that they learn and then get the engagement as a byproduct. I'll stop there.
Now, that is a very good point. By the way, I really advise to go to that website because I copied also some activities from Sardik, but also looking always to the objective, because it is very easy to try to make it so fun, the training so fun that it's more entertainment than training. People will get a wonderful feeling, but they get nothing. It's like going to the movies. So Justin, I saw that you have your hand, but Lisa, that hasn't said anything before, I will give the floor to her first, if you don't mind. Lisa.
And it's rare that I'm shy, by all means. So I just wanted to make sure that we
you look a little bit frozen.
We had your ideas first. So I just was on a large-scale project on a systems-based Oracle project, and I used a lot of Bob Pike activities to make very boring systems-based training much more interactive and engaging. So besides these resources, I just want to say that's another great resource. Besides Sardik and Filipe and Tiagi, is the Bob Pike, their Train the Trainer was really great.
Awesome.
Thank you. I mean, this is the great thing is that we like to do webinars like this because we also learn. So it's, and because a true trainer is the one that is always available to train, to be trained, not to train only, but to be trained. So thank you, Lisa. Justin.
Yes, I have a comment and a question. Actually, my comment is for Rachel. I had an issue buying a webcam last month and a half. I went to Amazon, it's out of stock. I went to Amazon US, Amazon UK, and I tried to shop in Kuwait. Actually, I have one of my friends who owns one of the biggest electronic stores. He said we're out of stock. So what I did, I'm now connecting using my mobile as a webcam. So you can download an app and put it on your computer, PC, and connect your phone to it, and it become a webcam. I have a laptop, but the cam that comes with the laptop is so lousy, and I even cannot change the background with Zoom. But with this one, I can do that. This is my comment. So whether you have an Android or Apple, I'm sure there's a software.
Oh, no excuse. People have no excuse to not have the webcam.
Yeah. Now,
but did you see Crystal's comment in the chat? Webcams are like toilet paper. You can't find any.
Well, we don't have an issue with toilet paper in Kuwait.
You have more sophisticated toilets. So,
he's still talking and he was muted.
Oh.
My question is about timing.
I didn't.
Timing the course. If I like, for example, I have a 3-day presentation skills course, and I want to put it online. I'm sure I can't use the full day online. So how do you distribute this? I was thinking of recording some lectures and then asking them to view them, and then come do the actual exercises in the part of writing the presentation, an activity like 1 hour, 2 hours. What is the normal good timing for the online training?
Okay, on that I have evolution in terms of my opinion. Before this crisis, I would say that, well, more than 90 minutes is like too much. But I have been doing 4 hours. So actually, this morning I gave at the university like 4 hours class, and it worked. Why? Because you have to put a lot of activities inside. So you have to basically put people to co-create the content of the class. And in this way, you get much more input from the group, and at the same time, you get the engagement, and also you understand that they are there, and they also understand that if they are not there, they will lose. So I wouldn't say that do the full day. That I think it's too much, but I think until 3 hours, it is very safe, and you can split it, and also split in terms of a synchronous and synchronous moments. Preparation of the synchronous class, after class exercises that, and also one thing that I use that is very, very, very effective is that I do video feedback. So many times when we talk about asynchronous, so let's imagine that people have to do an exercise and send to you. You know, let's say the first impulse is I will write an answer. I don't write an answer. I do a video, and it's asynchronous, so people can watch it, and they can watch back and forth. So in order to understand what I meant, and it works well because it gets much more personal. Sadiq, do you want to add?
Very much the same thing, and Jasmine has this correct. Again, going back to the flipped classroom model. And I think what I'll do is I will send out to everyone, since we have your email address, I'll send out maybe a one-pager to kind of give you an example of what this looks like. So forgive my just poor drawing here, but the point here—
analogical.
Yeah, analogical, right? You just see, break it into parts, right? So the V stands for virtual. And chunk your content down. You should do no more than 2 hours per session, ideally, okay? And break it into 2-hour sections. So you may need, if you got a 2-day training, normal face-to-face training, you might need to do 6 2-hour sessions, something like that, and break them up. And then in between, here's the key, here's the flip part of that. In between those sessions, as Filipe said, give them asynchronous things to do, things that they can watch a video, they can respond to, they can have if you got an online portal, they can get into the chat, you can ask them to fill out questions in the chat. And then when they come back into your session, virtual session, part of that 2 hours should be heavily, and here's a statistic, or percentage, I should say, 30% of your time in your delivery, your live delivery, maximum should be lecture. Let me say that again. In your live delivery, 30% max should be how much time you spend going blah, blah, blah. The other 70% of that 2 hours should be dedicated to having them do something, some interactivity, case studies, breakout rooms, whatever it may be. Keep it simple, but have them application focused. And that would help you to chunk down your content, get rid of unnecessary fluff that gets to results. That's how you design this stuff. It's not designed based on the amount of content. It's based on the amount of performance outcome and results you want.
Okay, Crystal, you want to ask? And only a word of warning while Crystal is connecting the microphone. We normally finish 1 hour after we started, so we still have 11 minutes. So if you have a question after Crystal, shoot. Yes, Crystal.
All right. So I want to say for both you gentlemen, this is refreshing to see this engaging session without the use of PowerPoint. And I will say that is something that I'm trying to wean myself off of that I can still have an engaging training session and it's just me. And Sardik, I love the idea, like 30% of my time should be the lecture and people love the interaction. They still come out, she was the best trainer ever when I made them do the work. So that's a great reminder. A lot of what we're talking about is around the synchronous training, and I'd love to hear from you all of interaction and engagement, because I've kind of seen it when you get on Coursera a little bit, and what happens is when you do the asynchronous training, at least for me, I never follow through because life gets in the way, but at least when I have someone there at the bare minimum with synchronous virtual training, I'm there and I'm engaged and I'm learning. Do you have any kind of thoughts around that of the better practices and success for even the asynchronous training when people go in and maybe do an hour, 45-minute hour session?
Mr. Filipe.
I think what I was saying about the feedback, when people know that they will have a feedback, it is something that it's because sometimes people think that they will do an exercise to like in school, and the only information that they will have is like a grade. So when they know that they will have a feedback, and even if you inform them that you will make a feedback in video for them to see afterwards, and that will be their advice about your advice about their own work and how they can improve, I think that motivates people. That's my experience, that people get more motivated, and maybe in the first exercise they will not be like believing that will happen, but in the next one they will do it more because now they want also the feedback, because if they do it on time, they will have the feedback. If they don't do it on time, and you have to also give time. So I don't believe that the asynchronous activity is like you do like a synchronous session one day and 2 days after there is another synchronous session. Unless it's an intensive course in company, I would say that you have to give time in order for people to have this particular time to do it. I don't know if, Sardik, do you want to add something?
You know, this is a difficult challenge, no doubt. And I'm not going to try to sugarcoat this because we're all distracted. Life gets in the way. And particularly now, you've got all these other distractions of working from home. And so one of the big challenges that I try to, or things I try to do to overcome this challenge, and it works sometimes, it doesn't work all the time, there's no magic pill, is to Filipe's point, built-in accountability. And one of the easiest ways to build in accountability is to build in, this is that flipped classroom thing again, build in small projects that force them, that build on to the next thing. So, and let me tell you, if you want to you have to be careful about this, but I do this. I build in activities so that if they don't do them, when they come on to the live session, it becomes very obvious that they didn't do it because they're unprepared. And when they're unprepared, and you can imagine if we've got 30 people on here and you're unprepared and you're supposed to do your thing and you get into a small breakout group and you didn't do the work. And so you don't know what they're talking about. Peer pressure tends to take over. So I actually use those types of design elements to build an accountability where it's not me policing, it's them self-policing. It's a little bit of an advanced design. It tends to work a little bit better than just hoping and praying for them to follow through.
Thank you. Sadiq, my good friend from Fares from Tunisia said that he started online trainings and he got some of our tips and techniques, and it's working. So it is nice to hear that. But we have one question from Tonya that passed by because there is a lot of on the chat, so I'm recovering. And this question is for you, Sadiq, because it's about moderation. She was asking about how you find moderators and if you include it on the fee. Do you include moderation in your fee with clients? How you do it?
Short answer, yes. You build that in, and here's the thing, and for those of you who are consultant speakers, freelance trainers like Lisa, myself, Filipe, one of the things that you probably, most clients don't want you to do, you don't want to get into line item on this stuff, because what they might say to you, and I actually had this happen, I had a client that I was going to do some face-to-face training. Then all this happened with the pandemic. So then they said, okay, we're going to go online. And when they asked an immediate question, does the price change? And I said, no. And they were confused. They were like, well, wait a minute, you're not having to fly. You don't have the travel and expenses. And I said, yeah, but I also now have an expensive overhead that I'm bringing in a moderator to manage the tool. I don't do that. I make sure your learning experience is focused on your learning experience. No. And so one of the things that I didn't do is tell them how much that is. So you build that in, you go out just like everything else, you go out and figure out what that is, and you build that in as a flat fee, part of your overall price structure. So there's that answer. How do you find them? Typically, you can go to associations like ATD. I use NSYNC Training or people who used to work for NSYNC Training that are now independents that I've worked with when they were with NSYNC Training. So I've built up some relationships with some producers. But I have used NSYNC Training. I have no skin in the game, so I'm just throwing their name out because I've had great experiences with them. ATD also happens to use them, and that's how I became aware of them. So that's my quick minute and a half answer.
Okay. So we are almost reaching the end. We have the 5 last minutes. We have time for one last question. Meanwhile, while you are thinking of questions, I was doing like a compilation. I hope all are here of suggestions of links that were left by several people in this group. This is a kind of overview of all the links. So I just put it there so you can copy it instead of looking for it through the chat. Any other questions? If there is no more questions, Sadi, can you share your website, and I will share also my website.
Yeah.
So you can keep in touch with us. Let me give you a very short advice. Something that I use also. And for instance, for connection, that's good English. Connecting. Let me see if I can find it very fast. Yes. So, for instance, here, I'm going now to against what we just told to Crystal, not using PowerPoint. I'm going to use PowerPoint, but it's only to share a slide. So this is the slide that I want to share. because this is a neat way of connecting, because nowadays we all have like these QR code things, and this is with a LinkedIn app. So if you want to connect, you have over here, there is, there is the QR code near the search in LinkedIn. And if you click, you can scan. So you can scan the QR code, and suddenly you will get my profile. So you can connect directly like that. So this is a way of creating connections. And that QR code, you can create another QR code for your website, or for a form that they have to, because sometimes you need to give them a form or something like that, and you can create a kind of interactive experience that they can use the phone. Everybody likes to grab the phone and do something with it.
Yeah, Filipe, if I may real quickly, here's a little tip for the independent consultants out there. Use social media as a way to find out what your ideal target market wants. So if you look at what I'm doing on Facebook and LinkedIn, so on my personal Facebook page, if you're not connected with me there, you can connect with me there. I also have a business Facebook page, but on my personal page and on LinkedIn in particular, I'm just asking people questions. And if you notice what I'm doing, I'm getting a lot of feedback. And so that's giving me insights as to what people want. So you can do the same thing if you're an independent or a freelancer. And then if you're internal, if you're a corporate client, or if you're an internal trainer or consultant, you can do the same thing, but you need to be asking people, what are their biggest challenges? And that'll allow you to find out what's going on. And I'll close out by saying, definitely follow us on LinkedIn and social media, Facebook and things like that, because both Filipe and I, he's doing a lot of webinars. I'm ramping up on a lot more webinars on storytelling. One's coming up next week that I'm gonna do on how to tell stories in virtual environments and things like that. So we're giving away a lot of stuff for free right now. So you wanna grab our second favorite F word.
It's a fire sale. So, or a pandemic sale, let's say. So guys, thank you very much for, this is the kind of webinar that I like to do. Sardik is a wonderful partner in webinars and training. We have always a lot of fun, and it's always great to be with a group of colleagues like you that are making questions and challenging our minds also. Thank you very much, and keep in touch.
Yes, stay in touch. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.